Silent Hill 2 is one of the most intricate narratives in the realm of survival horror. It is known for intense symbolism, thought-provoking grief, and showing how punishment squeezes around most of the characters due to their prior sins. We're going to take a deep dive into understanding the genius behind all 6 endings throughout this entire experience. Just keep in mind that even the requirements to get some of these endings have relevant importance that extends just beyond your mere collectible. I will be cataloging what that all means as we circle through all the motions together. The leave ending is logically one of the more happier endings that you can obtain in Silent Hill 2. This requirement creates obvious symbolism as a manifestation through sheer willpower. This motivation harbors the meaning to live, move on, and grasp the immense torment that the main character has self-imposed onto himself. The torment is grief and suppressed memories revolving around the unfortunate mercy killing of Mary Shepard Sunderland, James's deceased wife. In order to obtain this ending, you have to make sure that James has a hardened resolve to make it through this mental fiasco in one piece. You have to constantly make sure his health is always in the green, ignoring Maria's instructions and listening to Mary talk in the long corridor. This is all showing that James is not only wrestling with the weight of what he has done, but he's also trying his best not to ignore any past transgressions that led him to Silent Hill. Maria is a physical coping mechanism in a more spicy and seductive way, and this is ultimately James seeing through this manifestation of pure selfishness. This is what the town wants, to be sure that James never learns his lesson as old habits die hard. As Mary lays on her deathbed, James admits at the end of the game that he has an immense hatred for Mary due to her terminal illness, proposing that he wanted to live a life on the high rise, yet the burden of her dying was seen as detrimental. This detriment comes from James's sexual frustration, which created things like the bobble-headed nurse having some very orgasmic, round, oval-shaped size melons on their chests, according to his sexual frustration. But anyway, Mary questions this, knowing in fact that it is a half lie on the behalf of Mr. Sunderland. It is another suppressed memory, yet again, probably from Mary scolding him at the hospital, which caused some bitterness in the process. All of these mixed emotions couldn't suppress the one true ingredient: his true love for Mary. After all, it is why James is here, why James accepted all of the manifestations to go to their special place. It is already clear that James has a state of mindfulness going into this ending per the conversation with Mary. He doesn't see that it's Maria or makes the mistake of signifying that it's her. Mary presents herself as Maria in attitude, which pieces the connective tissue together that Maria was never really there. I mean, it's not like she didn't get skewered 5,000 times by Pyramid Head, but I'm going to digress with that one. Maria tries to reason with James. However, James isn't convinced about any of this, further adding that he doesn't need her manipulation to punish him anymore. This is also evidenced when the two Pyramid Head creatures kill themselves in the final battle. It only seeks to push the idea that James has torn down the walls of guilt. Obviously, this is where his wife turns into a nefarious creature as one final testament against her husband. Mary symbolizes herself as a complete monstrosity on the same sickbed that James killed her on, and he is victorious in the final battle. Free from guilt, free from torment, we see that James takes a portion of positivity with him. He guides Laura out of town and potentially adopts her, reigning in the idea that forgiveness carries weight between all walks of life. Laura hated James for killing Mary, but now we see the greener pastures that come into fruition as he takes her alongside with him. Mary would have wanted James to do something like this for her, all for her, and to be happy with an idea that involves carrying the torch to the future. Mary breaks down in tears, sobbing in her final letter that serves as a final cap to this ending.
You've given me so much, and I haven't been able to return a single thing. That's why I want you to live for yourself now. Do what's best for you, James. James, you made me happy.
We're going to cover some very sensitive topics on this part, but they are necessary to this piece that I'm writing. This ending is the antithesis to the Leave ending, and the credits end on a dour note. Like the fog present in the town itself, I would say there's a foreboding menace that lingers over every Silent Hill center, and that's the idea that involves suicide as a means to escape. I would actually use Angela Oresco as a prime example for the In Water ending, plus some requirements involve her anyway, so that's naturally the best example. Angela was an unfortunate victim of rape, and it was done not only by her father, but by her brother as well. This created an extreme bitterness towards men, the idea of misandry. Considering the context we see, it's no surprise that Angela gets extremely scared around the main protagonist, James Sunderland. Even if he means no harm, she jumps to the conclusion that James probably doesn't love Mary in the first place, saying that he wanted his wife out of the picture to begin with. This all leads to the final result involving suicide after Angela killed her father and ran away in a familiar fog that takes hold. With clarity and vengeance complete, she walks up a fiery staircase immolated by her own personal torment. Angela is the embodiment of what external suicide and human torment looks like as a manifest. Suicide is the end result of James that is alluded to many times over, and we see a dead body that looks exactly like him in Blue Creek Apartments. The developers understood that similar realistic trauma could be shared between these two characters, which is James and Angela respectively. It does create a bit of a hypocrisy on James's part when he tells Angela he would never kill himself, but in essence, Silent Hill can warp someone's mind in a nanosecond. The requirements for the In Water ending is pretty straightforward. It involves James not giving a damn about his own personal well-being, examining Angela's knife, reading cryptic diaries on top of the hospital, or reading cryptic letters covered in blood in Neely's bar. It also revolves around the idea of listening to the headset in Lakeview Hotel about Mary's condition, and this sort of sets up in motion the ending to this entire experience. It's about an unwillingness to let go before it's all too late, and the death knell creeps up when Mary dies one final time in subconscious form. James comes to the realization that Mary wanting death is reflective to his own personal desires. There's nothing else to cling to, and there's nothing else that James has to motivate him anymore. He went through this entire journey with nothing but emptiness in his heart. The desire for his wife breaks away, his perception to get her back. Mary is dead, and she always will be unless there's another option.
Now I understand the real reason I came to this town. I wonder, what was I afraid of? Without you, Mary, I've got nothing. Now we can be together.
Obviously, denouncing the idea of death do us part, James starts to rev his car engine, and then he plummets himself into a watery grave below. It's very obvious that fear caused him to do this later than sooner, which is evidenced by the dialogue. This is an ending where James effectively drowns on the weight, guilt, and remorse of everything he's done just to have a glimpse of Mary again in the afterlife. I correlate this towards two characters often thinking about each other well after their time has long transpired. There's a lot of rampant debate if this is the true canonical ending, since James isn't seen physically in other Silent Hill titles as we go over the timeline, but it's all ambiguous. The developers themselves said it's all up to player interpretation, so if you feel like James took the ultimate sacrifice, then more power to you. The Maria ending is almost cut and dry in regards to symbolism. Even a rocket scientist can figure out that James never really learns to resist temptation. It's all about having a cycle on repeat, an endless swirl as we delve into the rift of madness. The requirements show a strong desire to keep Maria protected, whether that constitutes towards James throwing himself in harm's way for her, listening to her instructions, checking up on her constantly, or ignoring everything that Mary throws in his general pathway as a sign. It's clear that James doesn't care about reminiscing over his dead wife or overcoming his grief specifically. He has a newfound replacement, a smoking babe that will help him get rid of all the pointless suffering over Mary. At least that's what he wants us to think, justify in his mind, right? Wrong. The grasp of consequence will shuffle in once again once Maria starts tailing James to an unknown journey. Then the atmosphere breaks down and Maria lets out the same extreme cough that Mary exhibited when she was sick, which implies that the terminal illness will also come back to haunt Maria. James slowly stops walking dead in his tracks, only issuing out a stark reminder that he doesn't have time for something like this to happen again.
You'd better do something about that cough.
This ultimately means that any lesson displayed here was pointless, as history is doomed to repeat itself. It's like a broken clock on the pathway to self-destruction. Whether James Sunderland knows this, or whether he can break the cycle, is up to debate, yet I doubt it personally. It's all an illusion, which is acknowledged by the player character himself, and I will say that is the path that he has chosen. It's almost like James decided to swallow a blue pill in this moment, and he wishes to remain content in this new false reality. Mary is fully eliminated as new delusions take shape in the form of Maria. This is why the town will always be there, to serve as a stark reminder that punishment is inescapable. Time knows no bounds. The Rebirth ending can only be obtained on your New Game Plus run of Silent Hill 2. Items will spawn that can be collected, like the White Chrism, a goblet, and books involving ceremonies and lost memories. Once your fetch quest is completed, James will lament how the old gods might be able to reverse engineer his ongoing plight. This involves bringing the dead back to life through an attainment of power distributed by these items. As Mary's deceased corpse is rowed on a boat, James takes her to an unknown and isolated location to perform the task at hand. The books relate to everything James is speaking about, which means he can examine them to some degree. I won't read the full context of these transcripts, but it is important to note that these bits can be traced back to calling Silent Hill the place of silent spirits, noting that it's not the first time that a ritual was done in the past in order to bring a loved one back from the dead. Tormentors also spoke about their vengeance, and these were notes given from the Crimson God, which could be a reference to Pyramid Head, considering the fact that the term Zuichibara was used. White Chrism and the Holy Obsidian Goblet was also sanctioned by the Order in these holy dialects. Hell, even Walter Sullivan used them for his own nefarious deeds, for the 21 Sacraments rule evil in Silent Hill 4. Whatever James was planning is up to interpretation yet again, since it is unknown if the old gods granted his wish to see Mary yet again. Well there, Pilgrim, I guess this part is gonna be rather short and weird. I guess it's not out of the norm to say Silent Hill always has obvious joke endings, whether they involve aliens, previous characters meeting each other, or some kind of dog controlling the entire scenario. For the dog ending, you just have to get the leave, in water, and Maria ending, and I believe on your 4th playthrough, a special dog key will spawn. Once you go through that distinct door with the dog key, you will find out that there's a fluffy Shiba Inu who is the mastermind behind the entire game.
お前の仕業ととなか。
Also, for the record, can I point out how stupid this music is? For the UFO ending, you have to use the blue gem in 3 distinctive locations yet again. If you're familiar with this in Silent Hill 1 with the channeling stone, then you're probably going to be more or less familiar here. Once again, you spawn the UFO in the final location, and you see that Harry Mason from Silent Hill 1 makes an appearance. James and Harry exchange banter, asking about their individual wife and daughter respectively, before James is shot in the back by an alien blaster. Harry helps the alien board the UFO with James's unconscious body, and they set a new path for an eventual anal probing. I don't think I should explain it any more in detail, so let's just move on to shameless plugs because the video is done. My name is Renegade Operative. I am signing out. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you like this video. Comment below, let me know how you felt about the analysis, and I will get back to you at my earliest convenience. Remember, check out my channel. I have a lot of content here about survival horror, especially Silent Hill, and I want to do more in the future as well. If you have any ideas, be sure to email me them at renoperative@gmail.com. That's renoperative@gmail.com. Once again, see all you beautiful people later. Take care, and once again, peace out.